deep issues of liberty, sovereignty, and economic viability, not just sustainability.
Right.
So this is a big, and there's a lot of common ground amongst those four sectors: value and life purpose.
Jack, I'm sorry, I got carried away with it.
It's okay. Thank you for your time.
I don't know if any of you can answer this question, but when I read about this, I heard that it passed in the Colorado legislature by one vote. I don't know if there are any groups within the state that are working to try to advocate for this.
No, I think that's what it really, and it was like 42 to 21. And they just want a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
What I saw this morning, so it wasn't that close.
But the 2/3, I think, was one, I think she's right in that, one person voted differently.
It's no more. Yeah.
So I guess the point being, by maybe stall it, maybe things might change at the next.
But the hard part for us in the county is that was set into law last June, and we're just barely finding out about it.
Well, and there's a second piece of legislation, so here's the other piece that makes it really tricky. So the first piece went through, and then there was a second piece that went through that was trying to address the rural issue, right? And kind of slowing things down. So these are separate, and they got voted on separately, right? But that's kind of what's impacting us and giving us a scooch bit of breathing room to kind of address the bigger issue. Yeah.
So to kind of go off on those suggestion of thinking about the bigger picture, not just county level or whatnot, there is the last meeting about this stuff that Matt went to here, the PLA and Chris Wybrow covered. There is a IECC training 2 day in 2 locations coming up, one on April 10th and one on April 12th. The first one is in Alamosa County, in the Alamosa County building. 2 sessions, one starts at 7 in the morning, runs till 10. The other one goes from 2 to 5. And the other one's down in Del Norte on the 12th. One starts at 7 to 10, other goes to 2 to 5. Just real quick on that.
And on Zoom.
And on Zoom.
And both of those are on Zoom.
And then real quick on that, because who wants to drive down this at 7 morning? Training will discuss the intent of the adoption of the 2018 IECC, and it will also contain training on phased implementation. So that's going to what you guys are talking about and kind of what JR is talking about with, hey, let's choose what we, if we gotta be forced into this, if you will, from state legislation, then there is input in us doing stuff like this and going to these meetings and trying to figure out what implementation and how it can be utilized. Because again, the article on the Crestone Eagle says they have 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Pete, who's the sponsor of that training?
I know, it's Excel Energy.
And who's the consultant? Who's the consultant for the county on these codes?
I hope it's setting it
Amber
up.
Wilson, I don't know.
Excel Energy.
Excel Energy. So I'm not saying this is gonna solve the issue.
No.
And I knew that it was Excel. But what it comes down to is if you know what they kind of have expectations, then we can, as alternative builders or natural builders or whatever, we can propose these ideas like you guys are saying of, hey, of course they're gonna twist your arm and say, oh yeah, you wanna do it this way. But again, this is flexible. And this doesn't mean the end of natural building or alternative building at all. I want to be very clear with that. It just means that we have to participate in how this rolls out.
Yeah, Mo and I have taken that training class.
Yeah, and Nick is going to that. So, the thing that would be really great is to have it inundated with all of us.
Right.
Because we're going to all ask questions that maybe other people won't. Yeah. And I think that's really important. And again, it is on Zoom. I've posted the flyer for that across all the groups, Chill, Crestonians, Kiosk, Preservation Society, and Mindful Land Use. But I can repost it again. But yeah, I feel like if we could be really, know thy enemy, potentially, but also be asking a lot more questions and networking, right? Because we as a group tend to be pretty empowered, folks who question authority, and other folks might not be doing this.
Well, and I want to remind everybody in the room how much power this community has. Since I've been here, which is not quite 9 to 10 years, I've seen us stop smart meters, cell towers, the Emergency Authorization Act, and I've noticed that when we show up, Crestonians in general, I'm gonna use that broad term for everybody. When we show up at the SLBRC's board meeting or county commissioners meeting, they shake in their boots. They hate it when we show up because we're so outspoken, we're so smart, and we work together. And I've noticed also that the unwritten ethos in this community is nobody can say anything bad about my brother but me. When we have to bond together, we do.
Boom.
And so we could do it again this time.
Let's go.
I'm really confident in that.
I'm curious, are these building codes affecting other counties in this valley?
Every county in the state, statewide.
So now
Democratic
to throw
minds.
out just a little interesting monkey wrench. And part of my goal in us all getting together is that I would like us to do a presentation at the state level. So right now, the state, through the Department of, it's like Department of Health and,
Human Services.
no, it's Department of Health and Environment,
Oh.
Public Health and Environment. So at that, through that governmental entity, they have rolled out a thing called the Climate Equity Framework, right? So the Climate Equity Framework has been brewing for a while. They put out a bunch of stuff last January, and now it's in place, and you can go find it. And that framework basically says we get a voice. We are a microscopic community, and we actually have a voice. So the thing that's kind of fascinating about this legislation is that the legislation has been enacted, but it's like you said over here, we actually get a voice and have a level of equity. So these groups are not really speaking to each other. And, you know, the governor has, you know, signed this bill, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm hoping is that we can, again, be the thorough group that we are and use their own words to kind of go, hey, you're not paying attention. You said we get to have a voice here. How this rolls out is a really big deal. This is impacting our community in tremendous ways, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, Lars.
Well, New Mexico has set aside a place where people build earthships. So they bypassed all the normal building codes of New Mexico.
That's incorrect.
It is a code.
So Taos in the Greater World community where Michael Reynolds developed all that and other Reach and three other ones down there, there's only 5 acres that Taos County gave to Michael Reynolds to experiment with no sort of codes, no building codes, electric codes, any of that. But every earthship in the greater world has to, and I know people that build there, the contractors and went there and all that, they build and they get footer inspections and they look at the rebar and for any inspection, you know, so again, it's kind of a good thing in the sense you can still build alternatively and live inside of this IECC kind of, but it's kind of like what they did to educate Taos, because everybody in Taos knows what an earthship is. Mm-hmm. So they're used to it. So their county building inspector kind of, oh yeah, we'll fly with this and make it work for the code. But they do have to pass codes. Just like if you go up Salida, there's an earthship. If you're going east on 50, towards Kansas City, there's an earthship on the hill. The Chaffey County has building codes, you know, so there's alternative things, lots of different places, so you can still do it. It's just what you guys are saying is implementing and working with the adoptions with land use and competition.
Yeah, if it's accepted, then it's gonna be a lot more expensive.
Yes.
On that subject, the way I understood it, Pete, was that Michael Reynolds got 50 years experimental, certain amount of area.
5 acres.
And then he had to, after that 50 years expired, or whatever it was, then they looked at it, inspected it, and then determined if this was gonna be okay. Has that happened yet?
No, and that's not.
And then if they said, no, this ain't gonna work, we're not gonna adopt this, he would have to take it back to its original state.
Right.
I want to jump in here real quick and say this is why it's so valuable that there's already a performance-based code in the international code that the county can take and adapt and amend. Because what that says is, basically, we don't care what you build on as long as it, is strong enough to hold up the roof and doesn't burn at this temperature, or whatever the criteria are. And usually the way that government deals with that is that they say, well, you gotta send your sample to this lab and do this particular test this way. We'll say, no, we're gonna write our own tests. We can develop our own tests. And, like I said, you can take sandbags and test how far your cottonwood, aspen, cedar beam, whatever it is you have, you can do your own testing with very basic materials and have an engineer go, okay, I get it, yes. So that's the space we want to hold for natural building, because we don't even know what all is out there for natural building. What's somebody going to innovate in 5 years here or somewhere else that's great that we should take on, right? Let's allow the space for creativity, as Robert was bringing up. So that's part of what let's make this place is.
I just wanted to say one more thing here. I was still a commissioner in 2012. And at that time, we had permitted numerous solar projects. We could never get REC or what's the other one?
Excel.
Anyway, the other main provider that comes in the valley. To buy, none of the companies that were exploring going with us could sell any of their electricity to the companies because they would not buy it. And the BLM had absolutely no interest in people putting up a solar facility on their property because federal regulations were so much more expensive to go through than it was to do it on a private property. So I just wanted to let you know that, just so you're not.
Well, no, I mean, my big point with that was that things that have been sleeping, we've hit the critical mass, right, of numbers of people. So, and then changes at the Fed level, right? So it's kind of this moment of like, that's why so much is kind of coming down the pipe, right? It's like, that's 11 years ago. Like, who would have thought 11 years ago it's about nothing, like, and you're just explaining why. And then now it's like, oh, we actually have a level of numbers, and there's a shift that these things that we forgot about.
Like the last frontier.
Yeah, well, it is the last frontier, are starting to be potentially activated. And we have to be aware of it.
So, you also said one of the codes bans natural gas.
It's not a code, but that's what's happening elsewhere because they're pushing, high efficiency energy systems. And they'll keep LP, they'll keep propane, but they're gonna push us out of that. And I'm not quite sure why, but Abraham?
Yeah, the most important national electric code is Article 90, which is authority having jurisdiction. So it really speaks for the inspector's interpretation of the code. So I really think if we have have our input on who the inspector is, then we have influence on how he interprets the code.
Because John Hines, electrical inspector for our county through the state, again, he might let certain things fly where a front range electrical inspector might not at all. So I think if we can get involved with going to our county commissioner meetings and the land use meetings with Andrew Wilson at a county level, because she told me on the phone, they haven't hired anybody. They don't have any inspectors in line to fulfill for the county position. And like the Eagle said, again, I'm going to reference it. They have 3 years to come in compliance with it. So I'm with Abraham, where if we can get a good inspector in that sense in a relationship before they hire the inspector through Amber.
I know they use, brother.
Yeah. But long story short, yeah, that's it.
Solar fielding at behind Saguache, we know who's going to benefit from this power? How are we going to get it? Are they selling it to a facility co-op? And then are they going to once again up on the pricing like we are in the shared rate hours?
Yeah, I don't really know. Basically, it was an article
I
in
read
Raw.
it.
Yeah, and so I think, again, what I'm really hoping is that this room, people will pick their passion, right? And go, we need to answer these questions, right? Because there's so much happening so fast that, again, I'm putting information out there, but I have no idea. And that's an important
Because
question.
some of these solar farms out here, no one's getting that power as of now. Yeah.
Well, I do know,
Contracted people out of state, and they built it, and then they said, okay, now you need to purchase from us, and it costs this X amount to run it, which was a part of the deal, and now they're just sitting there doing nothing.
well, when Georgia implemented the solar panel, oh, by the way, it's illegal for a person, a homeowner, to own solar in Georgia. Because Flint Electric and Georgia Power came in, they put all these solar panels in, and now you have to pay them for solar sun. You can't go and put solar panels on your house, it's illegal. Here, you can do it, but there, you can't. And if you had it before they implemented, what they do, just like she said, they put a box on your house. And everything that you use is free, but everything you don't use, they charge you for. So I don't know how they came up with this rule, but again, they're coming to take every way we have a freedom. This is what they're looking for. Anywhere
I think you might be close to something on that because the 2021 codes, they require every house to have electric vehicle charging stations.
see,
Even if you're not in favor of electric vehicles, you gotta have a plug-in, and then you have to be solar ready. So you have to have the wiring for solar, even if you don't want solar. So,
My Ralph over here is a sign-up sheet. If you want to help out and get involved, please put your email, your phone.
you betcha.
But Lisa wants to make sure that gets passed around. She wants to capture who's here.
I think it might also be helpful for people to just like note down which parts they'd be interested in working on. Like, I really want to work on water, you really want to work on electric, and you really want to work on the natural building. Because to get through the 700 pages or whatever, we're gonna have to break it up into small chunks.
Yeah, we'll go over this later, but like, Sean's gonna take on the natural building arm. I'll take on the building code arm. But I'm one person, Sean's one person. I need help. He needs help. We all need help with this. So if we could get at least 5 people out of this room to help dig in, we don't need philosophies. We need action. We've got to have a response to the county on April 27th. We need to dig into this code to understand it. So if you're passionate, if you can help out, we need that help.
So, for the folks who can't, Deb?
I just wanted to speak as I'm often the heretic, so I'll just pick one tiny little snap at that. Alternative building is awesome. I've got alternative building, friends do, neighbors do, but building code in itself is not pure evil. I bought from a really recognized builder out here 20 years ago. My wife did. They didn't put any steel in the concrete. And guess what? I spent 20 grand fixing it, gluing it together. So, there are some common sense things in there that we can integrate into sustainable building practices,
Yeah, the study I read this morning talked about how if we bring our houses up to these 2021 codes, we might spend $9,000 or $10,000 or $20,000. The net benefit's like $300 a year. So we don't get a massive benefit by going to these codes, but our houses will be slightly more. We're in a county that's got like a median income of what, $25,000 a year.
Can we
No
talk
one's spending
about the
that much.
nuisance ordinance?
Yes, please. What's that?
Yeah, so we're gonna start discussing different topics in 5.
Yeah.
We've got about
We thought we'd have-
7 minutes, so we'd like to go around the room and introduce people that didn't already introduce themselves.
Don't forget about us online.
Given, we're April, May, June, and that, are you guys seeing or anticipating a significant increase in the re-permit applications, given that we people worldwide?
I have no idea, but I'm telling friends, I'm sorry, I'm telling people that if you want to get in before the code changes, I would advise.
Does that help you? If you get in before the code changes, what does that do?
Well,
We're hoping it grandfathers you in.
From what, yeah, what Saguache County Lanes told me is if you pull a permit before July 1st, you don't have to worry about this. So you got 3 meetings to make it in.
Well, unless you want to sell your house.
Well, again, going back to what he said.
So we're definitely trying to not make it a villains, it's more like how do we address the situation? So we have an agenda for the 5 to 7 part. So we really would love to hear from the folks who just came in. There's like about 8 people.
And that agenda addresses the nuisance.
And it does in fact address the rate.
oh, one more thing, this conversation is open for Zoom.
Yeah, okay, are we?
So at about 5 o'clock, we're gonna start recording that, and we will let the people on Zoom ask questions periodically, because we want to involve them in their consideration.
I have one question, Marie.
Hey, we're here now.
Colorado just voted on this. I tried to look it up where I can be more informed, but my phone didn't inside there. What's our representative do? Did he go for it? Did he vote against? Has he ever been up here? Have he ever attended any meetings that you guys did?
Debate's always good.
I did a little investigation, so there was a little confusion because one of the people who wrote this bill is named Valdez. It's not our Donald Valdez, it was an Alex Valdez. So that Alex Valdez is the Front Range representative and Donald Valdez is our representative.
Okay.
I wasn't able to see what he voted, but again, I think there's a sensation from the second bill that bill came out last year. The second bill is a little later that's trying to kind of address the needs at the rural level. And I don't remember who was on there, but so our Valdez guys, anyway, there was a rumor that he was one of the signers, but he is not. There's a Donald and an Alex, and our guy is Donald.
And you don't know if he voted for or against?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. It's not easy to figure out, to tell you the truth. So are we able to keep going with the?
Yes.
Introductions.
So anyone that has come in since we did introductions, go ahead and we'll start with you guys. Just tell us your name and where you live. And
my name's Charles, and we are living in townhouses right now. They're over by the school.
Hi, I'm Dana, same, living in Oaklands by the school. Yeah. But I'll ask you a question.
Yeah. Introduce yourself.
Oh, Kevin Van Walligan, I'm a townie, but I'm attached through a trust to the Baca in grants.
Maybe Bell Lake-ish, and I live here in the Baca.
I'm Tony Canada, I live in the Grants, and I build also see you.
Okay, we have some back there. You want to introduce yourself?
Chantel, Baca property owner.
Alice Graves, Chalet 2, property owner.
Lori Nagel with Crestone Eagle.
This handsome gentleman on the bench. Yeah, you.
Keith Conway, Baca.
It's the hat.
Shane.
Shane Ennis, living to build in the Baca, and I also live in the Baca now.
Anybody else?
And there's 2 more people, Lars.
Lars Skogan, I've always got some project going on. So, yeah.
Builder and one more person.
Osha, living in the Rockford right now.
And
Doug, living in Chalet 1 the past decade plus, and also Lisa Bodie online wanted to have a quick check-in here. Lisa?
Hi. I miss everybody. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, we've got about 10 of us online. So we did have a brief conversation with a few of us at the start of the hour. We got patched in, for a majority of what you've been talking about. So I just thought if everybody online, and I wanted to just thank everyone. Reiterate, if you do sign in, that information is going to me. So I know a lot of people are always very concerned with that or what group or who. And I just want you to all know this is just an organic that I will be very protective of that, and that it would just be for our purposes to update you when we're going to host meetings like this. And we're really encouraging any other community groups, everyone come in and take a piece of this, because we don't really know what all our roles will be. But I also just want to let everybody else online have a chance. If you want to check in, please put your name into the crowd.
Hey, this is David Lindsay. I live up in Chalet 1. Good to be here with you all.
This is Dan Gray. I live in Chalet 2. Nice to see you.
Okay, I think that's all for Zoom.
Okay, so
Last few people.
There's a few more, but we'll just let them be silent.
Yeah, Lisa, for now, I'm going to mute the Zoom audio. If you guys have comments at the end, do the hand raise function, and then I'll know to bring you up later.
Thank you. If anybody wants to talk in between, I'll stay on.
So we have 2 more people to get introduced.
I'm a builder, Downey. Everybody, you'll own nothing and be happy.
Okay, so we got the agenda up right here.
What's this?
Here.
If you want and if you want to get involved.
Sorry, for one.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so since we're officially at 5 o'clock hour, we do have an agenda. And since a variety of people came in a little bit after we sort of started this informal thing, we thought we'd just introduce ourselves one more time so everybody knows who's talking. So Goldie is gonna take it away.
I just want to make one quick suggestion. I would suggest that somebody has it on their computer, that they get the email list and send out a copy of the law that the state passed and a copy of the different building codes. I know it'll be an awful lot, but it's a lot easier for people to be looking at that on their computers than to go out and try to print a whole lot of hard copies.
I would say if anybody wants that information, find us afterwards and we'll get it sent to you. Because we're not gonna send it to everybody's out list. Pete. Keep passing that around.
Okay, Sean, or no, just go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Brett Buchanan. I'm a builder here in Crestone, building a project out in Moffett as well. I wanted to bring all the builders to this meeting, and there's a few of you. So raise your hands if you are a builder in this room or an owner builder. Because
that's why I live here.
Yeah, I wanted the help from the builders because this will affect the livelihood of all of you, costs, through inspections, through codes, through licensing, through insurance, but also the owner builders because you'll have to understand how to build to codes and your costs will go up too. So,
I'm Sean King. I am a natural builder, natural building teacher, primarily Cobb, is the material I'm most familiar with. And I'm also becoming Waka, house water. I deal a lot in my day job with regulators and regulation and laws. I also deal with scientific rules. So my technical contribution would be helping actually rewrite the present so that it can work. I'm also very interested in connecting with natural builders here. And so the people here who call themselves natural builders in the sense of how they approach their building, raise your hand and just want to get a picture of that. Cool. All right. So I don't, if you have questions about natural building or want to contribute, please do talk for that reason. I'll also be talking about nuisance ordinance.
So my name is Morgan Mulligan, and I'm a townie, also connected to some property in Nebraska, and I'm a writer. So really my background is that I was contributing to the two educational presentations that came to, that we did for the county commissioners, one on minimum square footage and the other one on alternative sanitation. And so my hope is that, my resource as a writer, that we can come up with this presentation to address the state and kind of whack the back in the head with their own framework that they set up to really get what we want.
Okay, and I'm Goldie, and I built a house here with my partner Matt, and I'm just here to kind of help things flow. And we have this space from now until 7. Thank you very much, Becky and Carol, wherever they are. So we're going to respect that timeline, and I'm just gonna put this out there. I know we've already been talking for, Jay, yeah. Jay is taking notes, so watch what you say. Anyways, we've been talking a little bit already, but just some ground rules for people to, let's not interrupt each other and just really keep our hearts open, because obviously there's a lot of people here that care about this place a lot. And this is really a listening session, so we want to pull as many opinions out of everyone as possible. We're not really here to speculate on what we think is going to happen. We want to focus on what we know. So just keep that in mind. And and then also just we're up here, standing up here, have done some planning for this, but we really want everyone here to take ownership of what we care about here and not depend on other people to do the work because of whatever, So if someone is talking about something that they're interested, each of us are going to talk about maybe our specific areas of interest, but if that is also an interest to you, please get in touch and help out. And Brett and Sean and all of us have said we need help. So this isn't us doing the work and you guys supporting us. This is a group effort. So
Okay, so basically, I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit here, but for the people who came in late. So the bigger framework that I am requesting us to really hold is that our incredible community is on the cutting edge of so many things, right? And whether it's building codes, whether it's pushing back on all kinds of things. So part of the task of this meeting is to have us really, again, as Goldie said, open our minds, open our hearts, and think about the ways in which, as we move forward to figure out what we want to do, we share this across the valley, right? So we live in a sacred valley that has 6 counties. We happen to be in the area that has the most incredible brain trust and leadership. And so lots of people across the county, I think, a little bit feel backed down and we just have to do this. And we're the group that's going to be saying, no, we're not going to do that. We want to figure out what we want. And so that is the piece that I think is really important. And I think the other thing in our conversation for making this agenda last night, one of the things we talked about was, we all have passions, and the things that we disagree about, I think, are really strategies, right? I think there is an ongoing sensation that we want to protect what is here and why we came here. How we do that is sort of, can be cantankerous at times, right? But I think that, again, as Morgan so beautifully said, we can fight amongst ourselves, but when we need to look out, we need to be united. So that is the big goal. The we're gonna write notes again, as Goldie said, on the listening side, because not everything about this is necessarily bad, right? Like, it's not necessarily that every component of this is terrible. And I'll just throw out for people to ponder, as someone who's doing a lot of grant research, we don't get to access USDA funding because we have no building codes. Right? Now, you know, depending on who you are and what your income is, you know, this is a big deal. There's other things that are knocking us out. So again, in this bigger idea of the framework, our goal is to really highlight the number of things that are going on, have people come together, you know, do a little networking. There's a lot of binders right there. Something's grabbing you, take a picture of us, maybe loan those out. And we're going to hit the nuisance ordinance. We're going to talk about the code. And take it away, Mr. Stone. Okay, so
I'm not going to say a huge amount about it. There is a proposed nuisance ordinance that is already been in front of the county commissioners, and there's a lot of public commentary available to happen in person at that meeting. It's kind of fast tracked. I believe that their next consideration of it is the 7th of April.
Fourth.
It's coming around again. We slowed it down a couple of times, but it's coming back again on the 4th.
Okay, so clearly there hasn't been enough public input on this ordinance, and there needs to be more. I have written to the commissioners twice. I've provided them with modifications of the ordinance itself and the language of it. But what needs to happen more than anything else is for everyone to directly contact themselves, the commissioners, and say, this is how this impacts me, this is what I'm concerned about. We need more time for the considerations of this, and if it's for you, it's absolutely beautiful, any such thing, say that too, because I had it come from you. What I would like to offer to do is get a person to CC on those emails so that I can collect the collective voice together. Kind of be the node, the record keeper, the whole record. And I will also be attempting to turn what's coming into language in that ordinance if instead of just saying if it moves forward, we have to say what it actually says and what it does. So that's me. If you're interested in this, come and talk to me or get sign up, list that in the sign up sheet. And I will be helping with that process, but most importantly, we'll get you the put up the addresses, the email addresses of the commissioner and stuff right away. Get an email out saying we need more time, these are my concerns, this impacts me personally, president here, whatever it is. Get that out to them so they see that they need to put the brakes on it so that we can get more.
Where's the nuisance? Where's that coming from? Where's that?
Because there was vicious dogs. I don't know how it turned into like light and cars and all this other stuff, but it came across the planning commissioner's desk initially because there was dogs running loose, and that is why we tried to address this. I was on the planning commission at that time, and then they just pulled something from like Boulder County's nuisance ordinance, and so it's got all this other weird stuff in it, and I don't know why they're pushing it and why they haven't pulled all that stuff out of there.
If you haven't seen it, it's in this week's Saguache Crescent, which is the paper of record for the county. So if you want to know what the county's business is doing, it's good to have a subscription for like $15 a year. And it gives you the entire verbiage for what's in this. And when I read it, I was, oh yeah? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here. One piece that, you know, I think is interesting. If you have a camper on your property, they can come and look and see what's inside it and decide that if it is not a real camper and is being used for storage, then you get fined
It's considered junk.
or taken away. There's a lot of stuff in here that is very concerning to me.
Yeah, they talk about going onto your property, trespassing on your property.
So I think we really we really need to say something quickly because the third reading is April 4th. That's next Tuesday.
Public comment, public comment.
It's long.
Well, we have-
It's like 2 pages in this paper, which is fine.
It's, 15, 18 pages, something like that. It's not much.
Well, if you want to hear the video, if you go to Facebook and you get on Crestone Podcast Radio, Jeff videotaped the whole meeting. And I want to say this. You want to talk about extending it? They said during the meeting, I watched this whole thing yesterday. When I found out about this meeting, I was in the visual watching with him yesterday, the whole meeting. And at one point, the lady said, if you can prove their avenue of approach to the law, if you can prove that it's not working that way, such as she mentioned the registration of the car, the junk cars in your yard, and them making you either register the car and have a tag on the car. Well, that's not law. She didn't look up the complete law. She quoted the CRS laws, which are Colorado revised statutes, but she didn't go into the total law where Supreme Court law states. I won't get into all that, but the whole basic understanding is if they bring up a stipulation of their law, their 9.0.30.01 or whatever they bring up, and you have a controversial statement that proves that wrong, they now have to start all over again. That's what they said in this meeting. It's like, okay, well, if you only prove, you don't have to do every one at one time. You do one, then you do another, and then you do another, and they're going to get frustrated with this nuisance law. And what they're trying to do against money. They don't have any money. They're trying to get into your pockets. So they're creating this nuisance law because of dogs.
I think that's an exaggeration. Our county commissioners are not trying to get money out of our pockets on a personal basis.
No, I'm not saying that, but the operation of the operation of the county, let's face it, how many people here are paying all the taxes that all the rest of the state is paying? You're not, because you don't have all those tax codes listed upon you because of your building codes that haven't been implemented. Now they're trying to implement them. Why? So they can get more taxes, more fines. Somebody's not living here.
It's not because of that.
I'm not saying that's all of it. I'm just saying it's part of it.
People that are our county commissioners are elected by us. They are very approachable. And I don't think that there is an underlying scheme to try to get a lot of money out of it. I really think that is.
The good point we heard was if we say something about one of the things we read and it doesn't go through, that will stop it. So we all need to look and we need to have.
I'm saying that means.
No, that's not what it says, Robin.
Well, no,
It says each item in there.
Right.
Has to be challenged individually.
Right, by us individually. So we have till Tuesday.
We don't,
We can do it one at a time.
right, you can extend this
Internally.
internally.
All right.
But that's what they were frustrated about. That's what one of the commissioners was clearly frustrated about. That indeed, we do have the power to turn over one thing at a time, and they have to start from scratch. And she reiterated that in the meeting, so we do have that power.
Better than that is just.
Make it personal. It's send the email directly to them, your name on it. If anybody here is, uncomfortable with being known with commissioners, I'll help find some way to make it anonymous, or I will put together a group email that says, with my name.
What's yours long enough?
All right, 916.
And I'm wondering if.
Okay, I'll actually put it up.
We walk in the commissioner's doorway now, before they say out loud, oh, you're back, like Charlie would know, oh, you're back.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna get that organization really fast.
Yeah.
If I'm that's why I'm really saying, send it yourself. Do it right away, so that they see a flood of things coming in. really clear that you want to work on it.
Makes sense.
What's the date? Because I heard March 31st. There was some, because I heard March 31st, something.
That's tomorrow. We were asking for March 31st because no one's on time. The meeting is on the 4th, right? So the goal is to have enough assembled, right? But if you're sending emails, like, do it. Like, just,
Yeah, maybe tonight, tomorrow morning, whatever, as soon as you can, get it out. It doesn't have to be perfect, it don't have to be, the most eloquent you've ever been or anything, just get your story in and what your priorities are, you want more time, we're concerned about this, and it has to be
And it was, I have to reiterate, I don't know if you did watch that, there were certain commissioners that did express the concern that there would actually be physical people there and that they would set up new rules and laws about who could come into the building. Perhaps only one person at a time would be able to come in. So they are in fact intimidated by the physical presence of opposing ideas.
They work for us.
Well, they only give you,
It was publicly expressed.
Have you told them that lately?
well, they only give you 2 minutes to talk, but I imagine this. Imagine if everybody here showed up and we chose one spokesperson. Now, I volunteer my 2 minutes. I'll give it to him. He can speak.
No.
Anybody else volunteer?
No, because we all
Right, one person at a
individually
time,
get 2
6 hours
minutes.
would be long.
Right.
We don't want to have one spokesperson.
But if if he's speaking for everybody, he's done got, like he said, he has the conglomeration of emails, everybody's point of view. He has one spokesperson. Everybody else can say, okay, I'm speaking for myself.
About me in their eyes, it's important to be about each one.
No, they were extremely intimidated by the fact that there were going to be more than
People
one person
there, be
entering the
there.
building at one time. They considered, one of the commissioners publicly launched this, it's on record, considered having only one speaker in the building.
The building, not the room?
Because they were,
They're afraid of us. They're afraid of this. They don't want this. They don't want us getting together. I agree with what she's saying, but the only way they can operate the way they operate is for them to use their rules that operate their corporate business. Government is not an entity of singleness. It's an entity of corporate business. It makes money. So,
I would say like for the nuisance order meeting on the 4th.
right.
As well as the county work session for the building codes on the 27th. If you're voicing your opinion right now, be there.
I'm going to be. I promise you, I already got my statement written. I've made it 2 minutes exactly. Time. What I got to say, I promise you, everybody in here is going to hear me call them out. Like she said, they work for us. She said that. They work for us. I'm going to call them out on that. I'm going to call them out on, if you don't look up the entirety of the rule, then you can't make a contact law of it. And that's the problem, is they're coming by the rules that they play by, but not the rules that we play by, the Constitution. They didn't look, she said, what was it she said in that meeting? We're going to make this happen no matter what by the most stringent rule. That's what she said. I said, what? By the most stringent rule. So they're not in this to just come at us a little. They're trying to come at us with everything they got. For what? A nuisance? Because you got a car broke down in your yard that's been there for 15 years, all of a sudden it's a nuisance. Who makes the complaint? It's my question.
I just want to respond a little bit to this, and even a little more, maybe Val said, is that there might be one commissioner, I think I know which one, who's speaking those terms, but if you have 3 commissioners, the ones that are not on her page, it's really important to address them respectfully.
Exactly.
Because there are commissioners who will listen.
Exactly.
And especially if we speak respectfully and as community members and not assume the worst of them, because that's happened a lot in the last 2 years. And they are people like us. And whoever said that, she has an attitude. But that doesn't mean that her voice rules the other commissioners, that people come in with respect.
Right.
And as community members and asking like reminding them, like you said, that they were elected to represent our voices.
Well,
So
she
it's
said-
really important. I know.
She said in the meeting 6 times.
Yeah. And I think she.
It's on video. You guys.
Was it?
You people.
But we do have.
You people. She said it as if it's like the wrong.
We have 2 or more commissioners that will listen and vote according to what people are asking for.
I will be there for it.
And they have before.
Hey, everybody,
So we
that's who we
have
have to work with, that's the
Yeah.
context we have to
Yes.
work in, we have to make allies. And we maintain them and maintain those relationships.
Yes.
That's the only way forward with this.
Well-
Whether you're talking about total refusal or rewriting it, or whatever it is that page you're on, that's the context that we have.
Well, Liza Marin stood right there where Goldie's at, and she stood right here in this room, and she talked to everybody who was here that day. And she spoke a very profound truth that she is one of us, is what she said. Ever since I watched her, every video I watch of her, she's acting on our part. So I agree. We have people that are there, and we must pick and choose our newest commissioners.
To speak about this right now.
Yeah, she does. She wants to pop on.
So if you want to let her pop on and talk
Yep.
about this.
Lisa, please.
Thanks, Doug. You know, we really came in with this mindful land use when we've addressed them twice before with presentations. We've gotten to the place where we want it, and we are really trying to redirect that conversation. So I think, you know, as Mady Bell and Michelle are saying that, I want to affirm that they really want to work with us. They reach out. There's a lot of conversations that have happened over this last year or two to make these things happen to get to this point. So don't discount, like they said, we've elected them, you know, they are representing us. So they're in the same boat trying to come up with solutions as we are. We can't expect that they understand these codes and ordinances anymore. I think it's like you get this pile on your desk and you're like, I just got to get it moving, and we have to slow it down. So thanks.
JR, on to that comment too, like, I talked to Liza Marin last week. She wanted to talk about these codes, because she told me, like, I want to understand these codes. I want to get the community involved in this.
Right.
This is what's coming in the pipeline, help us out.
Right.
So there is that extension from her, that she wants our help with crafting this.
Right.
But also, so the whole county understands where she's coming from, where they're coming from, and what can we do so that we're aware of what's gonna happen to all of us.
Where exactly do we find this nuisance? We have to.
Saguache County's website.
Not easy to find.
It's a real nuisance.
Going up here right now, if you contact me, like, you gotta come up here, take a picture of it, if you have a camera. If you contact me, I'll send you a copy of it.
They sell this paper at the work.
What's that?
They sell this Saguache President at the Mercantile.
Oh,
Right in there.
All right.
They're gonna sell out, they don't have their new.
And I would like to reiterate what Beth said, like, all the important stuff that happens in the county is in that newspaper, and it's a little hard to get your hands on, because it's not everywhere, but it is a great paper to read. You wanna stay on top of this, and all this stuff is coming down from the state, hitting our county, and so like, if there's if all of us in this room stayed on top of it the whole time, we would really be able to keep Saguache County, or, you know, create the Saguache County that we wanna have.
It's $15 a year. They send it out every week. It's a real bargain.
And his Dean still hands
And it
that
makes
the
good
letters.
fire starters too. You have to, from the old issues.
It's one of the last papers in the country, hand set. And you can go see the machine.
Okay, so you're gonna keep moving on, so, let's wrap that part up. So next, Brett and company.
Okay, so now I want to open this up to a conversation with a group about the building codes. Energy codes, I don't really quite understand, like there's bits and pieces. And most of us haven't dug into the building codes yet, or the energy codes, or the possible impact. But, you know, one thing I wanted to talk about with the building codes is, so Liza said there's 3 options we have. One is do nothing. Don't adopt any changes. And, you know, we can go where we want to go with this, but You know, with adopting no changes of the state might make us adopt the 2021 codes.
How would they do that? How would they would just do it?
They would do it, if the county doesn't make a decision, they will force the county to adopt the 2021. But the county does not want to adopt the 2021 because it's too expensive. It'll cost us all a lot of money. The county doesn't want to do the 2015 codes. That is an option, but the county does want to adopt the 2018.
Why don't they want to adopt it?
It's not inclusive enough, and I don't know why, but it just doesn't bring us up to code far enough. And I think the impact that we're gonna face in this county is we don't have any codes. We have plumbing and electric, and that's it. So for our county to get up to 2018 is gonna be a hurdle. But in 2026, if I understand correctly, they wanna bring it to 2021 codes. So this is just the first step. And then in 3 years, it's gonna be. So, you know, we're already having a hurdle just to get up to 2018 for building codes, but for energy codes, the same. You know, we gotta get up to speed with that one as well. So yeah, we have an option of doing nothing. We have 2015, 2018, or 2021. That's our option. And she asked me, like, what do I recommend? What do I think? And I'm like, I don't know. You know, as a builder, we already built codes for the most part. You know, we try to build our building strong enough
As a contractor
to make it to code. But energy codes are very different. So, but, you know, thinking about the impact that it has on us, you know, I think contractors will have to be licensed. So we'll see that expense. The contractors will have to be insured. I see that expense. I see building costs increasing.
Bonded as well.
What's that?
You have to be bonded as well.
Sure. Yeah. So I think existing homes might have to be updated. If you go sell your house, there might be updates. But I think the biggest impact is going to be new construction. Because that's what I read from Aggressive View. That's the biggest impact is they will make new construction adopt all these articles.
So we don't know for sure about when people are gonna sell.
I mean, he talked about this earlier, but I talked to Nick Navarez about it last night, and he said that, you know, if a home inspector goes through your house before you sell it, and they find that you're not to code, you will have to address those. Or sell your house as is.
To take the hit on the seller side. So that's the tricky part, right? So we had 3 categories, which we haven't figured out exactly how we want to do that. So we wanted to look at speculation, like first, what do we know, right? Because people have contributed just in a tree conversation, what we know. Speculation, right? And then what we need to know. So.
And we don't know a lot right now because we already dig into it. Like I'm one person, and so I'm gonna dig into the building codes in the next 3 weeks. And me and Mo were doing the IECC training.
Yeah.
But just so you know, Amber, what's her last name? Wilson, she hired a consultant to consult the county on these codes. It's a special interest group, it's Excel Energy. So she didn't reach out to the other energy companies, natural gas or propane or solar, it's just Excel Energy, and I think they have a lot to benefit.
Do they serve it? Do they even serve Saguache County?
They serve Saguache.
Okay.
So the SLV REC is kind of KD, Moffett, and us, but Saguache on the other side is Excel. And so I did see Wade, and he was sort of making a comment that this was potentially a conflict of interest. So again, you know, when we look at the letter writing process, you know, these are questions we need to be asking. It's like, why isn't SLV REC on there? Why don't we have, you know, Jones Oil, like whatever?
Lisa's glad that, you know, at least we have one special interest group that's a part of this conversation, but we should have 10. You know, we should have a broader diversity of people that are, you know, paying attention and helping with these codes as well. So, Is there any questions about building codes? Lisa?
Nick Navarez.
Oh, sweet. Get him on here.
Hey, Nick, we're calling on you. Did you want to speak to this? Lisa, did you say someone else had something to say too? Was it Wade? Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Nick. That was my fault. For it.
Okay. You know, exactly what Lisa said. As long as we remain vigilant, and what Maureen said, as long as we remain vigilant and use this as an opportunity to shape the rules to what we have not only known, but also what we've studied here for over 40 years. We have real data that's unique beyond anything anyone else in this state or even country has. So it's a unique opportunity to encode forever what we have learned here. So, you know, it does suck. Don't get me wrong. But if we are going to take a lesson from this, that would be the one I would say to take, is use this as a way to move forward cohesively and try to avoid the divisive rhetoric, because it's not going to help any of us in the long run.
Okay.
That's all.
That's it?
Yeah. I'm done. Yeah.
Be done. Excellent. Thank you, Rick.
That was beautiful.
Okay, so with the building code, some thoughts about that is it will increase the cost for building. Whether you're an owner, builder, or a contractor or a homeowner. Contractor, not so much. Somebody's got to pay for that. But owners and owner builders will take the brunt of these changes, because we'll have to, throw out extra money for that. And I've seen some numbers, and I think the state, the local leaders don't understand the impact of these costs. Because I've seen numbers from as low as $6,000 minimum. I've seen $8,500 minimum. I've seen $22,000 minimum.
I just priced license, insurance, and workman comp to the tune of in excess of $15,000 for a contract company of 5 employees.
Yeah. So from an owner standpoint, you're going to see the contractors charging more, because now we have to have licenses, we have to have insurance, we have to be bonded.
License isn't that expensive, it's the rest of it.
Right.
Good,
So
maybe
we're
we'll get more homeowner builders.
If that's allowed.
Gotta write that in the code.
It'll be allowed.
It'll be allowed, but the owner builders are gonna have to educate themselves on what is code. So there's that impact. And unless you live in a cave, I'm sorry, I think this affects everybody. Because if the owners, say if you rent, the owners, if they have to upgrade, it's gonna be a higher rent. If you're building a brand new house, it's gonna go up in square footage. Because I think right now, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we're about $300 to $400 a square foot. You know, some of the bills are $600 a square foot. But you're gonna increase that by $50 to $75 a square foot across the board. Because it's not just building codes, it's also energy codes. And they're pushing for high efficiency energy, electric systems. They don't want propane, they don't want natural gas. And I'm sure as hell they don't want fireworks.
The new code came out today, all the washing machines and dishwashers have to be more efficient. Special soap and everything else. You might have to wash them twice to get them clean.
On that note, just make sure you're aware of any rebates that are available, so it will help offset some of those costs for your upgrades. So
Kind of. Mo mentioned a USDA loan that's available for rural. But what's the implication of that?
Well, there's two pieces on that. So a lot of reasons why we don't qualify is that most people have more than the minimum 1 acre lot. So USDA to make in our area, which is slated for these kinds of loans, you can only have the minimum. But if you were the poor staff who saved their money and got their 3 acres, then you're kind of screwed, because now you're not qualified. And then straight up, when I was talking to, the recommendation from the Colorado guy, USDA thing, she said we didn't have any codes, we don't have a building inspector, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the thing that's interesting is that if we really ponder what Sean's talking about and really imagine controlling what this is, right, then we do benefit in other ways, right? So again, then not doing anything will only hurt us. And then how do we really address what we really want that can impact our entire region?
I just want to kind of circle back to what you were saying about rental. It just kind of caught my ear. So if we built something before the new code came in, but if we decided to sort of repurpose a mother-in-law apartment or something like that, then would we have to bring everything up to code at that point if that's the post-adoption of this new building code?
Quite possible. I don't know. If that's what we gotta dig into and find out, is existing homes, are they gonna be grandfathered in? Or will they require?
Yeah, I mean, we have so much freedom to do what we want with our home.
As well as the push rights. Yeah. I know in some counties, if you tell them that you're going to Airbnb your property, then you'll have to be treated as a commercial property, hire licensed electricians instead of being able to do the work yourself. So just be aware that they're
Just don't
treating
tell them.
Airbnbs as a commercial property.
Just don't tell them.
Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about, Pete, you had a comment, right? Okay, so next we want to talk about is what are your concerns with these bills, with the building codes and the energy codes? What are your concerns?
Well, what's the infrastructure bills and all the other alternative structures that.
Yeah, Sean's gonna talk about that in a minute, but that's a big concern we have because, there's different natural building methods that could be approved, but there's other ones like Scuria bag or aircrete. There's newer ones out there that we don't know if they will fall under statute of being taken.
Because the states, so this is the state's building codes that this county's being forced to adopt.
Yes.
So the state has to have structural specs, engineering specs on whatever it is, right?
Yeah. Potentially, there is performance-based codes where you provide the data. So I can talk some more about that. That's one of the places, and that's the international performance-based code. So it's already out there, and it's alongside and attached to these year codes that we would talk about, 2015, 2018. Each one of them comes with that section. So we can pull on it and say, okay, we want to remove more of this. And we use that to hold the space for strong, to hold the space in the water. That's an area I'm going to keep working on, is getting the language right, getting the amendments right to make that work.
Okay, so that's one thing I didn't fully understand is so when we're talking about adopting what in 2015 or 18 or 21, it's we have room to work. It's not just we have to take it exactly as it's written. We have room to make amendments ourselves. Or?
Every place I've seen, I looked around like that, the city of X adopts this code with the following amendments. This by section of the code that they're amending. So that be long, detailed as we like.
So that's what we're going to do in working groups.
Yeah,
So if we break it up, then we.
I think we can work with the state on amendments, because I think the special group that was assigned to create these codes and implement the codes was assigned last year. And so there are special interest people, not special interest people, there's people from all different things, there's electricians, there's plumbers, there's building inspectors, there's, mechanical engineers, there's builders, inspectors, it's a good variety of people that are creating these codes for us, but they just created them in the last 9 months. I think we have the ability to help them amend and fix it for our needs.
They may have familiarity with industrial materials, technological business, or not with natural building. So you have to bring that to their table.
Yes, but there's also a rural component. There are people on that board that are considering the rural impact. And I think we're below that. Because in their mind, rural's 10,000 people, we're 6,800.
Yeah, we're still frontier.
Yeah, I think we're like the last stronghold. So it's like, we gotta do something about opposing these towers, opposing the solar farms, pushing back in certain ways. But I don't want us to push back so much that they throw us in 2021.
If this is the case, why don't we, we got a blank slate, blank canvas, why don't we make it exactly like we want this community to look? All the dreams that we've had, the ideas that we have.
It's not
because-
exactly a blank slate.
Well,
We work it.
well, I'm just saying, we can implement some stuff and ideas that would make this community better, because we're nowhere near there. If they cut the gap, if they stop coming in with the trucks, we're done. So why not look to the future and make this community the way sustainable? Because we're not.
I
So
believe that is our best strategy.
So the way I understand it, kind of Michael's question was, well, the code stuff, like the for sure's versus the concerns. You know, we're gonna have to have an architect involved. That's gonna cost you money. You're gonna have to have an engineer that stamps that architect's drawings and says, yes, you can sign off on this. So like, for instance, back when I built my house 7 years ago, we just implemented where we had to have like engineered septic systems. So I had to pay an engineering firm in Salida $1,500 to draw my thing. Or back in the day, you just call Potter and you put it in. Jim from the county would come off and say, yeah, that's great. Here's my mileage. It's done, right?
And that already applies.
Right.
But a certain faction of the county.
Exactly. So what I'm saying though, with this building code stuff, that's what it's gonna be like now. So we're gonna have to get an architect and an engineer involved. One thought on the engineer of how to go with what Sean's saying, with working into like alternative build, straw bale, earthship, whatever, making it pass the code, is that county inspector has to have some sort of relationship with that engineer that stamps that architectural drawing that you submit to the county and says, yeah, I've done these earthships before. I've done this up in Aspen in the straw bale or whatever. So it's really getting a good engineer that can sign off on alternative things, and then we have that relationship with the building inspector, hopefully, that is educated to these things by what Sean's saying with exceptions and amendments and things like
It
that.
doesn't mean we can possibly just make it part of the code that the county has to hire someone who's qualified.
Absolutely.
For building
Absolutely. So that would be a fighting point. And the only other thing in the sense of the code, in the sense what the inspector would be looking at, would be like your footer inspection, you know? To Doug's point, want to make sure the rebar or the concrete don't crack, right?
Please add steel over concrete.
Foot
You gotta
rebar.
have to look at framing inspection, you know? So it's like, those are kind of the two big things. I don't think that the inspectors for the code per se, how would you say, eliminate alternative building, straw bale, earthship, whatever. It's just, how do we do it and play ball with their rules and what they want to see with the engineers and architects involved.
And I think that's what we gotta learn to, you know, work those connections with those inspectors and with those engineers.
Like, for instance, a lot of people know Nick Chambers in this room. Nick does a lot of the methane digesters and gas pump, you know, throughout history here, 10 years of championing that.
Yeah.
Like, he got in good with Scott Johnson. Scott Johnson gave him a stamp, who's an engineer here, on the architectural drawings, right? Put one on at Valley View or whatever. So it's like, even though that the county's never seen that before, they play ball because there's an engineer that stamped it. So there might be some alternative stuff happening, but we can figure out that leeway.
Yeah, I'm looking for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did talk to Scott Johnson about that and using tiger bales like I'm using, things like that. He says, sure, I'll stamp it.
Yeah, there's a lot of engineers that will.
Did you have a comment right now? Yeah, how confident you guys think that they are willing to implement these amendments, just based off of solely how we're struggling to push back on the nuisance?
Well, so here's my strategy. So again, just to talk a little bit about strategy. So this climate equity framework that's coming out of a department at the state level, my goal is that we sort of manage that the way that we manage the situation with the county commissioners, where we made an educational presentation. And we sort of showed how far we've come in that. So we're really not exclusively talking to our county commissioners, right, who are gonna fall back to the requirement, this is at the state level, right? That's kind of what they did with the situation for minimum square footage. So my goal, again, hoping we're gonna grab some people for this part of it, is that we're making this presentation that has a lot of education, that we're highlighting, again, our unified voice, right? We're getting all these questions answered, and then we're saying, hey, when do we get to have this conversation, right? Because it's not exclusively a county situation. Yeah, they make the adoption, but we have to think in terms of jumping up one more level at the state to say, you didn't give us what we were supposed to get, which was this equity piece and our voice. So here, we're the voice. This is what we want. This is what we figured out. This is what we're researching. So that level of education is really how we sway the commissioners, right? And it's an ongoing dialogue about the alternative septic, but we've made inroads. Sean got a grant to really look at some of the specifics of that over in the KV. So again, the goal is education, right? But then to really be a united voice with that education for this vision. Because what we're noting here and understanding, right, is really what they should be doing, right? Like that they haven't sent anybody out. Frankly, in my opinion, there's an ombudsman and I'm like, oh, we need to talk to you. Nobody's come to see us to say, how is this impacting your community? Everything that Brett just listed about the issues of the price costs, right? In our very often considered impoverished community, though that's changing, they haven't sent anyone. And why haven't they? Because nobody's asking for it, but that's what we need to do in this bigger educational piece. More things on here that we should be adding with that? Yeah, go ahead.
Home, being a home builder, like an owner builder, and like how is that gonna change? Maybe not change, so we still have the ability to be owner builders.
Just a thought or a suggestion. I think there are several other counties, primarily in eastern Colorado, that do not have building codes also. And if it hasn't happened, maybe it'd be a good idea, especially as we all talk networking, to find out what's going on with them. And maybe there's some overlap. And I think, again, there's power in numbers. And that might or might not be something that.
No, it's good. I think there's 4 counties in the state that I've heard.
Yeah.
That are in a similar situation.
So
And
that might
perhaps they're
produce-
further in their process, and we could learn from them.
Well, they might or might not, yeah, but it might be worth a call.
Bonnie?
I've just been on a slew of these governmental organizations in this area, but I have been discussing with John Milton and just other parties the idea of wildcrafting cabins, and this idea that I've kind of been looking at as a future project. The wildcrafting of cabins is like such a really lost art, and it shouldn't be lost, There's trees up here that we could, I've been walking up in the mountains in areas where there's lodgepole pines sitting there, choking each other out, and those trees should be dragged off and maybe, on the private parts of those lands. Cabins could be made on the spot, and it would solve certain problems, create retreat places for people. And the way of nature won't even be able to build wild cabins. And just as someone who has a history in Colorado, my relatives since probably the 1900s or earlier, I want to see the ability to do some of the wildcraft. I don't think it should be out. That's crazy.
I think someone brought up the fact that Mike Reynolds Earthship, the founder of the Earthship movement, got a special space in the law. It's experimental.
Yeah.
We find a special space in the law. It might be preservation and primary skills. It could be tribal skills. Whatever it is, we can help establish that in our code.
Right.
Code, let's hold that space.
Yeah.
Right. So let's definitely identify that as something. the space for primal or historic building.
Or technologies that come down the road, experimentation
That we
to
don't
try
know yet, yeah.
something new.
Eat and then type.
To Lonnie's point, like primary residence are houses that we build or live in, or like a garage that you build. That obviously is what they want to try to encapsulate with the code, right? But whether it's loft-crafted cabin or tool shed or whatever, you know, what if someone, you know, I see them everywhere. It seems like everybody's finding like those Home Depot, you know, big barns, and they get them dropped on their front. It's like, well, that's not the code. So there is a question of, is there room for these things that are not primary residence, in the sense of whether it's some sort of retreat thing, some sort of outbuilding that's not umbrella. No, I guess that's my question, in the sense of concern would be, what all covers it besides primary residence and or like a garage? A question of like, again, buying a Home Depot shed.
ADU. What about the kid homes that you can buy? ADU kits, whether they're the Arch Cabin or Paradise, or, you know, there's a number of them out there that are just kits that you put together. And a lot of those are 2x4 frame.
So Pete, there's three things that the county does allow us to have. One is your primary residence, one is your ADU, and then another is your garage or workshop.
So things like the cabin idea that Lonnie's saying, if they didn't call it someone's primary residence, it could not be included in this. Would that be a loophole?
Sure, I'm not really looking for loopholes,
But you know what I'm saying.
For clarity, like, I mean, Thomas Brown's built some cabins up here, retreat cabins. Those ideas are not horrible ideas,
right,
in our communities. To have some of the ability to build the things that people have been building for a very long time out of straight natural resources. Being disallowed to do that seems unreasonable.
And your point about loopholes is really important, because we don't want to rely on loopholes because someone might close them. We don't want to rely on the goodwill of regulators because, oh, we would never do that, even though the language kind of allows it. No, we don't want to do that either. We want to get the language really clear. We want to hold the space for what we want to do. Find that as a community and as individuals, hold the space for it. If you hold the space with the law that's in place, then we're far more protected from someone coming in and tinkering with it, or for the state steamrolling to the top of it, or any of these kind of things.
Okay, I think a couple more questions and then we'll go to Zoom.
Well, Kevin had a comment.
Well, just, you know, based on what you just said about the, you know, these old cabins, it's like, I feel like then there's also probably some other organizations and historical societies that might want to ally with us, and probably a whole lot of like, you know, the Scaria Company and other, so I'm just thinking like of allying with other entities and organizations that would like to see this not go this way, might give us a little of strength, particularly when going.
Just a quick question. Timeline.
That's what I meant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
For a while now. Sorry, Kevin.
And outspoken, sorry. Everybody's talking about owner builders. Touched on remodeling earlier, but never mentioned again. That's on.
Remodeling?
Yeah, what's that happening there?
I mean, it's an assumption, and we gotta confirm that with East Coast, but
It's in there
in
somewhere.
other states, this is an issue where if you do a remodel, say a bathroom or a kitchen, or you wanna add on extra bedroom, then you have to bring your house up to code.
Well, I can see the new construction part of it. I'm more interested in like what's in place. Say you buy someplace at a bargain, and obviously it needs help. Right?
I think if
How's
it's
that-
cosmetic,
how's that
it doesn't
gonna-
require.
How's that gonna affect compared to what's there now? There isn't anything there now.
It will affect cost because you'll have to pull a permit.
Well,
Inspector will make you bring it up
cost is
to
one
code.
thing. I'm just sort of trying to, cost is a given. They're the government. They get their cost.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering if you were familiar with any of the new restrictions other than the cost part. Like what's
We're digging into it. There are hoops. Sean has some stories from California when he was there about shower valve.
Oh, yeah, that's a crazy one. One of the things to, back in the wall. We have to law it because we have a special regulator system that city installed. We can't just turn on hot water. And the plumber, we called in to come get a bid on it. So I actually had not committed at all to do anything with shower, repair work at all. I don't install it, I must. And it's going to cost me $1,500 or $2. So this is where it can go. I'm not saying we have to go this. That's one comment. The other thing I wanted to say is each one of these beer codes had, in one of the subsections, they have this renovation and remodeling. 300 or 400 pages. It's part of the piece. So that's another one for us to pull over and work on. Because we don't want that, engine of horrendous cost and people just don't especially there's a shower anymore. Things like that. We want to have that happening. And we also don't want, people who want to take a conventional house and put it on a top or straw or something else. They want to do something innovative and try something, but they're not forbidden to do that because of the code. So those are various.
One more thing before we get there with building costs and how this will affect us, but Abraham's probably seen this before too, but like if there's certain requirements that the state now requires us to put in, like charging station, box, we might be coming across an issue with that box. It's hard to find. So it could take 6 months, or it could be 5 times the cost. That's the kind of stuff we're gonna see, or getting Abraham to come out and put it in. It's like a year. So there's those kind of implications that we'll face from contractors, from solar, from electrical.
Okay, I want to hear from Maybell and then Zoom. Is there anyone who's raising their hand on Zoom?
Lisa, you got your hand up. Did you want to?
I just wanted to remind everyone on Zoom that if you haven't got on the chat, I've been putting links in there and you can scroll back. If you don't know how to get on the chat, go to the top of your screen. It'll come up, or the bottom of your screen, and you can press chat. And I wanted to check in again. Is there anyone that would like to comment on the building code concerns for this section? If so, go ahead and unmute yourself or raise your hands. Okay, 3, 2, 1. I think we're good here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I mainly want to ask questions because I know that, a good part of our community lives in mobile homes out in Cedar Park. And I don't know, is there a significant portion of this that's going to apply to doing something with the mobile home? On certain age mobile homes? Does anybody have any clues?
I think the nuisance ordinance actually has 1975 as a cutoff.
Yeah, the nuisance ordinance does have some stuff in there too. That was another
As far as
consideration.
what the codes, we're not sure about that. It's another thing.
Okay, well, I'd like to put it on the list there of considerations because it could impact a lot of people.
Yeah, especially out there, it's quite a few of those
Most spoke to
older than
this
74.
presentation
Is there
on educational opportunity, both ways, I'm sure. And I wonder, to me, there's some things that are in code that we could perhaps agree on, that as well as educating what we want, what our voice is. There's some things we specifically don't want to see. An idea of building with natural materials and doing one thing. We did a big community thing in Griffin County. We harvested all our own logs like we'd always done, and we couldn't use any of them, even though they were strong and big and way overbuilt. And they had to come and inspect each log and then stamp the log itself before it could be put in the bin. So that's already happening, but what hasn't been happening here. But it's one of those already instituted code pieces. So if we could identify some of those things, when we speak about educating, so this is one example, because it may not be known that that's actually buried in there somewhere. Boulder County would not pass the straw building code because everyone read the Three Little Pigs and the straw house burns down. Right? And so they actually took the straw bale wall and they soaked it in kerosene and they lit it on fire. And it flash burned and went out because there's no oxygen. You know, there's those three things you need: heat, fuel, and oxygen. No oxygen in a well-compressed straw wall. But no one knew before that. They just made these assumptions. So you had spoken earlier, Sean, about we ask for a place to do our own experimenting. Of course, Boulder County hired whoever at great cost to do these demonstrations. And we may not be able to afford that. So how do we do it ourselves on the land? How do I show my 28-year-old sawed-roof straw bale, 10.5-foot wall, which you're not supposed to be able to do, holding on a pole I harvested myself from the forest. And I have no vertical cracking in any of the wall. You know, I mean, here's the evidence. How do we make a place to demonstrate as part of that education?
Well, and I think,
Sean, I'm sorry to pick on you, but can you speak up a little more? The Zoom's having a hard time with your voice.
I just want to say that one of the ideas I have as a possibility with the code is that we make it so that people can actually do that themselves. You don't have to have a special institution, even one that we create. It's like on your property, and there's actually, you know, basically it's like instructions. Here's how you use 2x4s and sandbags to test the tension strength of the engine or whatever. And then it also be specified that it's admissible that if you have someone or you know someone who has a wall that was built a particular way and it's been in service for 20 years and there are no cracks and it hasn't burned and it hasn't rotted or whatever, that can be entered as an example of performance.
Success.
Yeah, that this is, you know, it's achieved performance. Specification.
So just to respond also to what Rob is saying, so this is the place where we have a confluence of things, right? So we have the state, we have county codes, and then we have this new nuisance ordinance. So one of the things to kind of ponder about the nuisance ordinance is that we have, I think it's like 80 pages of code that's not even enforced right now. And we started to see what was in that when we were looking at the minimum square footage. So this is, again, well, painful, a good opportunity to actually really review what's already on the books, right? And then understand the double whammy of the nuisance, right? And then this kind of other piece. So, you know, unpacking that is a really big deal. And I have to say that the land use at the county level has been quite sloppy about how they put that out, how we access it, how they're making changes to it, right? Because you're supposed to see the documents that show the red line where they cut it out. So that's been a little messy. It's because of all of our pushback that Maddie Bell's example of the Crescent is happening, because they're actually not publishing things like they're supposed to. So we really have a big opportunity to address a lot of things that are kind of, you know, we've been ignoring because they just don't have any money to enforce it. But we should clean up and address, as, you know, as all these three things are hitting at the same time.
All of the discussion was just getting codes. Yes.
Is there anyone in here that we haven't heard from yet that has a concern on their mind?
Here's one. Goldie.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's important to impress upon the commissioners how much of their tax base depends on alternative building and how many more buildings have been put up conventionally by the alternative builders, primary workers in this community. And it's a point I brought up at one of the other meetings, is the more repressive the rules, the more detailed, the harder it is going to be for them to enforce those rules, and the more expensive it's going to be, and the more pushback they're getting hit. So the more user-friendly they make these codes, and the more they allow our input to give us some space to be creative
and to actually create alternative buildings that are superior to building code, then, you know, they need to be educated in that way if they're not already. And I think those points might go a long way in, you know, getting them to be more cooperative if there's any pushback. And yeah, I'm all for, you know, us being very, you know, respectful to our commissioners. And sometimes they want to just get a process done. And so if we can slow them down, and I think what you're saying, Sean, one of the most important things is put the right language in place from the get-go. You know, for instance, if an alternative building method is actually superior to code, you know, it cannot be disallowed. And, you know, there are a number of counties throughout the country, I think, that have gone through the process where buildings inspectors have been educated about alternative buildings and how they work and how they're safe and effective. And so, you know, just getting some of that database, you know, it's already been done, you know, and it's been done to some extent by engineers, you know, that have, you know, gone through that whole process with the inspectors in other counties. So. But I applaud everybody being here and being concerned, because most laws just get run through communities and there's no pushback or no real input. So.
There's no opportunity for participation. And I think one thing we need to realize is one of the fastest ways for something to just get rubber stamped and pushed through is to offer their help. Because how are they going to read an 800-page document and understand it? They need help. So, you know, that's part of it. And also, if we help them and we get involved, and they're invested in creating something, because they're creating law, they're creating something that's specific to the community, et cetera, they'll fight for it. But the state, they'll start pushing it. So this is the way to get them invested and enrolled in helping us, is to help them.
Write that down, what he said about if an alternative method is seen to be superior. We turn a straw bale the wide way, we get a certain PSI in a fat wall that's beyond anything a frame wall can hold already. And we get 52R. What conventional construction gives you 52R? You know, I mean, and there's so many things with COP, with Adobe, if we can get, and the engineers have figured that out already.
Right, but then we have outcomes, we have outcome study, we have outcome results and test standards, as opposed to how did we get there? What materials did we use is not necessarily what we want to look at. We want to look at ultimately outcome study.
Right. Yes. When I brought that up, it's like, I wasn't saying, well, there's no data, and we have to generate all the data.
Right.
So it's more like our materials locally, what are they like? And that's one opening that someone says, well, I have data on this other place, on this other type of timber, I don't have data on this. It's like, well, you know, here I'm gonna put 500 pounds in the middle of the span that's 8 feet long, and I can do that with bricks. So,
yeah.
You know, just dump stuff I have lying around. I'm gonna show you that it won't reflect on your image. In fact, it won't reflect in the way you can detect it all. Will that satisfy you? Yes, it will. Okay, let's do it. That's what I'm talking about, is allowing us to provide the data when it isn't here. I can't find it out there.
Yeah,
right. So that they can't just say, no, you can't use it because the data hasn't come from over yonder on high that says this is okay. I can't sign on it. No, we're going to show you it's okay right now. We're going to see the data right now.
I just need a little bit of clarification, because I read something and I want to make sure that I understand what you guys are saying, and maybe I missed something here. But I thought that the county was hiring at an extremely high cost a group to come in and help them with what you guys are talking about, understanding the 800 pages, how we're going to carry this out and all that kind of stuff. Maybe I'm wrong, or maybe you guys have been talking about that, but I thought that there was going to be a cost involved in that, you know, acquisition of knowledge process.
I don't know, I'm not aware of that. I'm only aware that they hired Excel Energy to be a consultant, one person. That's the only person that I'm aware of.
I'm gonna see if I can find that, because I thought that there was a group that was going to be facilitating that for them, and if we can somehow work with that group, because that's gonna be who has their ear, I think.
There is a state group, but the county level, I don't know if it is. So,
Those
so let's
quite a bit of
find that.
expense, very, very high levels.
So we should say, Lisa.
State groups all over.
So we have the county commissioner approaching one of our community members to say, hey, we need some help, we're building, can you help us with this? So that's already, there's signs that they want.
Lonnie and then Dave.
I just want to touch on practical resistance, like not out of anger or rage, but we're heading. I'm watching digital currencies a lot, and it kind of looks like we're heading for a world where they could shut off our money pretty easily. Like I'm not talking out my ass. I studied this all the time. But the type of rules, like smart grids, I don't think it was ever about the 5G or anything. It's about that they can shut down the whole grid if they want. Like they can just say, you have a and these kind of rules encroaching, and sometimes dragging your feet makes it to where you get the previous technology or the previous rules, and they're not as useful to this. So dragging your feet a little is not like a bad idea. Following some rules, we all need some rules, whatever. But I don't begrudge certain parts of the government, but I really think it's practical to drag our feet and give them the minimum. So I study a lot of that. They'll be able to shut up our cars remotely. They'll be able to do everything they want in just like 20 years. So dragging our feet is pretty good to maintain a certain part of our independence and our liberties.
Yeah, just to reiterate, like it kind of got touched on, but like land use is not gonna write the codes that we want. We have to write them. And that's why it's gonna be a lot of work, but they don't have the capacity to even read all of the UBCs. They're not gonna do that. And we can't tell them what we want and expect them to create it. Like it is up to us to find it or create it from scratch and present it to them,
Write the law itself, write the words ourselves. Not just tell them what we want, we gotta write it ourselves. As far as
Right now, as I understand it, I may be corrected, but as I understand it, like I built this little place down on the creek here, and it's unsold because I didn't contract with SLVREC. I have nothing to get out of it. So as I understand it right now, we have the ability to do that. Where in certain states, like this man was talking about, you can't go completely off grid. Some states you've got to be line tied, if I'm understanding correctly. I would love to see it get written into the codes here that we can absolutely be off grid if we choose to without having to do grid tied and locked into that system. Because if it comes into the future where the electrical company starts getting more and more power and wants to take that power away from people who are off grid on their own, it would be nice to get it in the books that we have a law before that power starts growing too much.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think we need to confirm that because it seems like the language of the energy code is they want to they somehow want to energize every household.
Right, but that would also, it wouldn't have to be grid tied.
That's the question you gotta
It's the only way they could just do it.
Because once you're grid tied, like for example, in Nevada, they were doing all these solar panels on roofs, and Warren Buffett didn't like it, so he got the law changed so that it costs the people who had put the solar on their roofs, it costs them more money as if they hadn't. And so if we get it into the laws before it's an issue, where they go, oh, that makes sense, then we won't have the Warren Buffetts of the world coming and going, I don't like the competition, let's lock it
when we dig into the codes, we're looking not just for profit, we're looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Damn, oh, Liza, you should. How long have you been here?
Only about 15 minutes. I'm so glad to be here. It's so awesome.
No more bad comments about Liza.
What you say about you?
I'm so grateful to be here to hear our stuff. Yeah, thank you.
One comment from Lisa, she had texted me. She would like us to see the county having all these people that can help out with this legislation, not just the state, but the county having not just Excel Energy, but other interested companies and individuals that you represent and push this along and help the county. Just Lisa's comment, so we can help that out. Dana?
Dana and JR.
I just wanted to clarify that we need to have this response together by April 27th, is that right?
Yes, that's the work session. Now, Liza, with that, I was trying to figure out, is that just gonna be open for public comment, like 2 minutes per person, or is that something that we can present something there?
So we'd have to set it up to have a presentation, but I think we could ask for that.
We can ask for that, I think.
On the 27th, is that what you're saying? Yeah, because I actually asked land use to create a decision-making matrix that's, because my understanding, I'm sorry to be here late so I don't know what your whole conversation has been, but what the county is facing is that because we have no building codes in Saguache County, we don't have to enact the energy code that the governor is saying we have, the counties have to enact right now. We don't have to do anything if we don't want to. But there's a consortium of all the county land use folks meeting right now in the San Luis Valley, all 6 counties, wanting to adopt the 2018 version of the energy codes, because if we were to adopt the 2021, that's a big leap. There's a lot of things like every new construction has to have an electric charging station. There has to be a R factor that might cause 2x8s instead of 2x4s, and framing and all kinds of things like that. But if we do nothing in 2026, we'll be forced to adopt the 2021 version. So but we only have till June 30th to make the decision. So we either do nothing, and in 2026 we have to go to the harder codes.
Who's forcing this?
Well, I mean, that's state, it's state.
It's the legislation.
Yeah, and if we don't, and if we take on the 2018 by June 30th, then we can stick with that. And
You guys have 3 years to come into compliance with that July 1st statement.
Yes.
Right,
I believe you're right.
And what kind of timeline and space do we have to invent? Because everything I looked at, municipalities will take it with the following amendments. So that's our opportunity to.
Right, I think, yeah, there's definitely an onboarding time frame that I'm not sure of. But when I asked land use to make a decision-making matrix for the 2018 or 2021, do nothing, whatever, they didn't understand it enough to even be able to make that matrix for commissioners to make any kind of decisions. And so I thought, that's why I called Brett, because I said, we need to really look deeply into this and see what the ramifications are for our community, depending on which of those 3 choices, or even, there's always a 4th choice.
Is there-
by the state law.
I was gonna say, if we don't take the blackmail that we're getting shoved into that 2022, we don't take that and we hold out for 3 more years, then we've got 3 more years possibly to come up with a 4th option. Is that not correct?
Yeah, that, I couldn't answer that, because as far as I know, we have 3 years, then we have to adopt the 2021 version of the energy codes. And I feel like the governor is, his aim is to combat climate change and to make us more energy efficient in the state.
Not gonna happen in 3 years.
Right.
Liza, just to respond at the state levels, they're part of this meeting, what didn't get to hear was that the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment has rolled out a climate equity framework that is supposed to address all the things that we're trying to talk about, the ways in which we're impacted. And none of that seems to have been activated in that process. There's an ombudsman, there's like all these principles about how they're supposed to be dealing with stuff, So part of the goal is to actually have a presentation that goes to the state level and says, look, you missed us. You said you were gonna talk to us and you haven't, right? You just enacted this legislation, that's really a big deal. So there is a desire to actually have an educational presentation to agenda for the county level to say, okay, what's going on? Like, we are tremendously impacted, just this specific area, by all kinds of things about it. Final question. So are you do you make the work session happen for 4/27 for us to bring forward things we're thinking about? Is that you? Is that?
Well, I mean,
how does that work?
So we just put it on the agenda, and as far as it being, if there can be community presentation, we have to ask for that. And I have to get the other two commissioners. But I would love to have that happen, so I would like to.
JR had.
Hold on, Liza, one clarification, we've got Dana, and then JR, if you're still.
Yeah, still got a question.
But Liza, about if we decide to do no code, that was an option, right? Wouldn't the state force us to adopt the 2021 codes, if we go for no codes?
Yes, in 2026.
In 2026?
Yes.
If we take the 2018 right now, are we safe in 2026?
Yes.
That's
my understanding. I don't.
Till they
I
decide
think so.
to.
It's like.
What happens if we just don't take it in 2020 or 3 years go by and we just don't take it again? What is the state actually gonna do? And what can they do? What power do they have? Are they gonna come in with an army or something? What if we're just like, no, we're not doing it?
Yeah,
The county would have to be convinced to do that, though, that it wouldn't be. Because they're, the climate is that they're in favor of building.
Why do we have to comply? What are they actually gonna do? They're gonna arrest all of us?
As builders, you mean?
It's just like,
Or as a county?
as a county, as like, citizens of this county.
That's
What
a
are they
great
gonna do?
question.
The money. Take that off their money. Let's just call it.
Lonnie.
He's injured.
Now stay in the room.
Oh my God.
That's not to code, somebody.
Violation.
I got that on camera, we're recording on that one. Crestone podcast is covering this one.
Nobody saw that.
Still house lives of Crestone, significant part of the
Significant part of the conversation was about citizen involvement. Do you think there's a possibility of there being like a, citizens working committee or whatever for helping actually amend the codes?
I think it'd be really helpful.
Okay, because I figured you can't read that even. You guys need one.
3, so I have to get the other 2 to agree.
So is that a presentation proposal that we would make at a work session to request to create the citizen committee that then could be voted on? Is that kind of how that was play out?
I think so.
That's it, enough for the kids.
Okay, JR's been waiting and then Lydia.
Okay, is it, do the inspectors, the people that come out to your house, the code enforcement people come out to your house, are they up to par on all this alternative housing building? Do they have any idea about the walls that she has in her house, or the walls that you're, as a code enforcer or as a person who builds by code, you know what you're doing when you go and do an alternative house? You've already built one. How does that inspector walk into that house and have the same knowledge as you, so that he doesn't have to ask you questions? He can go, okay, well, I see what you did. Like you say, you give him some kind of example. Okay, it doesn't bend at all. Okay, does that pass? Yes. Well, if you've already done the code, set it to code, since you're a code follower, if you build an alternative home and the inspector doesn't have the knowledge of the alternative home, how can he pass or fail the home? Is my question.
You would have to get, before that would even happen, JR, in the future, you would have engineers and architects saying.
Again, with the engineers.
Well, I know, but you can build a strong ownership or whatever with, you can still do alternative building with code. It's just more expensive. So it's like, you're to specifically answer your question, how does he know? He knows because he saw your stamp and your plans, and
okay,
that's that.
Okay, that's all I need.
I just want to speak
to an opportunity that I saw in the room that I feel would really be great to focus on, because what Liza said is that the state codes are coming from a place of creating a more energy efficient, and like sustainable Colorado, which we all know is what we're doing out here. And so I just kind of wanted to like redirect. So this is actually like a positive. It may involve a lot of getting our shit together and fighting for what we want, but also this is an opportunity to really showcase that, these earthships are more energy efficient and sustainable, and the straw bales are super effective in these ways.
Yes.
And I think that if we focus on us getting hammered down by these codes that don't make sense here, then that is going to be a place of disempowerment for enacting what we're going to try to really fight in the future. But if we focus on actually we're better off than all of these other places, we're in a good position to really say that we are living in a more sustainable way in a lot of ways. Maybe the charging stations, they're not going to Teslas out here, but I think that housing is a real place that we can be hey, actually what we're doing is really healthy and sustainable and awesome. More people should be doing what we're doing.
Yeah, be leaders for the rest of the state, right? I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
How to make the codes, actually.
Just gotta think before you
Yeah.
towards solution. Just to make it up.
So this would be otherwise, I guess, my colleague Wilson, they were talking about some stuff, just so, hey, what do you know? She's super friendly and helpful. And she's like, yeah, we haven't hired anybody in the sense of, building inspector yet. It's something we have to do after July, look into doing. But you guys have 3 years as a county to comply with 2018 or whatever. I would really like to know where your guys' direction is. It's how long are you thinking of coming into compliance? When, it'd be great to know when the building inspector is, oh yeah, we're looking for, we'll see that data that's looking for whatever, but it'd be great to kind of know, between us, we're still a year out, we're trying to get this all figured out at the county level. Legally, it says you guys have 3 years to come into compliance with that'd be helpful.
Yeah, so far it's been, if, not when, so conversations.
But when in the 3 year span of if, because 1 year later is a big difference than July 1st.
I need to kind of
something to know.
And just, I wanted to kind of address the concerns that I know you keep bringing up, and I think they're really important. The governor's role as executive power is to carry out something. So if we choose between the lesser of two evils or nothing, and we get a very different governor later, the nothing, and the governor chooses to not enforce it, would be ideal. And I just wanted to throw that out there. Right, because if you have nothing, first if you chose one of the lesser two evils, now you've got something worse than if you had done what you said, and no one's going to enforce it, but that's going to require a different executive branch. Just so you know. Just so you know, that we have run this meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna pause this for a second. Sounds like you have some Zoom comments.
We do have a couple Zoom comments. You're welcome to open up and ask those Zoomers.
Okay. May Folsom, and are you on the iPhone or is that another caller?
I'm on an Android. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, May, and then I'll check in with the other one.
Yeah, I just came from the planning commissioners meeting. I chose that. I would love to have been there, but I chose to go to the planning commission because I know they were going to talk about this tonight. So even though their agenda was very small. So what I understood, the April 27th meeting, because it's going to be so much covered, it's going to start at 9 now, 9 to 2, and who knows how long it's going to go. They're going to have out-of-county building inspectors speaking. as far as the XL thing that there's rumors about, I guess XL is sponsoring a lot of stuff or paying for, so we got big interest in there. I was sitting in a real bad spot and couldn't hear Amber all that well, but she said Hope Medina. I don't know who that is, but she may be with XL. They said they were probably going to adopt 2018 and modify that. And they did say Center has already adopted 2018, the town of Center. And then, we're talking about, if you're a contractor, you have to have a permit, and somewhere they probably will have to have some sort of building department and inspectors and all that. And so that'll all be discussed at the meeting on April 27th. So, and it sounds like there's going to be a lot of people there speaking. So
Thank you, May. And then I have on iPhone, if you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, my name's Peter Peterson, and I was a building contractor for well over 30 years in different counties in Colorado, and I've got a lot to say, but to be real brief, going back to several comments earlier, once, land use is saying, oh, we've got, we'll make it possible for alternative building, etc. What usually happens is they will ask you to hire an architect to sign off on your plan. What happens with building codes, whatever they adopt, is it makes it much more expensive and oftentimes impossible for an owner to build their own house. And I'm very concerned about adopting some kind of building code. So I think we need to really pay attention and educate the commissioners as much as possible as to our concerns. That's all I got to say for now. I could talk for an hour on it, but thank you. I'm glad to see everybody there.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, May. Oh, one last thing is, this is huge for the Energy Fair folks, and I know a lot of you in there are involved with that, but like the opportunity, even as that educational platform that we already have. And I want to give a big shout out for Doug, who's doing our live stream into Zoom and connecting us tonight, pro Beechwood with Terra Media. So thank Doug for doing this too.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for the call.
Cool. So we have about 30 minutes left. We have a couple housekeeping things to get done for that.
So we have two things. So we have next steps, and we have documents to invite people to write, and then when do we want to have the next meeting? So there was a little bit of a request to have this after working hours. Today it just kind of happened out really quickly. So I would like to propose in 2 weeks another Thursday, but more like at 5:30. That seems like a good idea. Is that basically helping everybody?
Wednesday.
Oh, oops, Wednesday. Okay, so we'll ponder Wednesday. So in 2 weeks, basically, I'll post it everywhere. We'll send it out via the Energy Exchange email. We also got emails here. And in 2 weeks, that would be the April 12th is a Wednesday, right? So at 5:30, does that sound good? I mean,
Is the April 12th the same meeting as the IUCC and Monte Vista?
No, April 12th is a Wednesday.
yes.
Oh, sorry, so you can't.
So the Thursday would probably be better, so. Okay, so we'll go for the Thursday. So then the next request is, I just, like, really simply, we're kind of ready to close out the meeting. And I just wanted to invite folks to just put their name, right, where they're interested, where they might want to go for it, right? And if you signed in, we can just cross-reference if you have your full name here, right? And then, yeah.
But we need your help with digging into these codes, because there's like 6 or 7 of us that are pushing this. And if we could get 5 more people, or 2 people per committee, or 5 people per committee, it would help us tremendously to dig into these stuff, because like, these code books are how thick? 800 pages?
800 pages is the main code, and then you got like 300 for renovations, and, for efficiency, another 400 or whatever it is. These are huge. So we need help through these things and finding, opportunities in.
I was wondering if there's a way we could assign people to small chunks of it and say, first, if they take responsibility for however.
Yeah, definitely. Like if there was 5 of us in building codes, we could assign, I don't want to study the same thing as you, but if we could all break it apart and study it and understand it, and then meet, that'd be great.
So I asked sort of people's interests, so people can kind of know that, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna take this and make it. So I think we're pretty much wrapped up, or did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a couple concerns to bring it back to the nuisance, right? So they say that they're gonna hit us, we people, for our blight and stuff like that, but the agriculture is left alone. Why is that? You know, why is the agriculture places left alone when they have tractors sitting on the side of the road that are all broken and abandoned in the whole 9 yards? They should be able to follow the same rule as us as well. It should be just as equal, okay? On top of it, with the code enforcers coming around and taking pictures of people's blight, so-called blight, that they think that it might be blight or some kind of infraction of this codes or penalties, will they be going onto the property and trespassing onto the property because they cannot come onto the property without notification of the to the homeowner, the whole 9 yards, or they cannot go on to other adjacent property? They have to take all pictures from the road, and they have to use their pictures, not someone else's pictures, because if they use someone else's pictures, that becomes hearsay, which is not submissible in court. So therefore, is what I'm saying is, don't go on people's properties trying to put a tag on someone's property that you've been violating, because that might not come too nicely in some people's property, you know. Some people's property. I mean, you might get somebody shot, you know? I mean, lead poison is very bad for you. You know, I'm just saying.
No, that's a good point.
So, I mean, that's my things. I have a lot of things, so I'm saving it for the 4th on public comment. So I like what I'm seeing here.
Because I think that's
It's,
where,
yeah.
like you do the public comment, and then
Absolutely,
here's the
absolutely.
stuff for our 3 commissioners that says, hey, it's serious.
It is. It's very serious. You know, I've been reporting on it, covering it from day 1. I'm not gonna stop. Every Tuesday, I report county commissioners.
Just as a reminder, the commissioner's contact information, emails are here, my contact information is here, and I'm offering help around the nuisance ordinance. So, come in, teacher list, whatever, try and get this out.
Is there any other questions? I know Lydia's got a comment.
There's a question, why can't they come on to the property, why can't they come on the property and investigate a nuisance? But they could come on to my property when they thought I was doing something.
You know, it's-
That's a good question, because it seems
I
like.
think there's some implications about the trespassing sign that you can put up where they can't enter to give it no trespassing sign, but some government agencies can. Do you know about this, Jeff?
Yes, I do, and I have the statutes and codes sitting in my front driveway. And as you walk around my property, they have to be posted every 40 yards, no, 40 yards apart to be able to become lawful and legal.
Yeah.
So there are codes about that.
Yeah, because the county assessor came to my property to measure my buildings when I wasn't there. And they left me a door tag, and it's like, oh, sweet.
Cops ain't even allowed on my property. They'll sit at my front driveway and give me a call.
Any other comments, questions?
I had a comment about, if we were to reply or respond to the message for all 3 of them, we have to jump on that.
Yes.
Find what? Find the nuisance,
Used on what, on Canada.
But they're waiting.
And also, you noted that it's been printed in the Crescent right now.
Okay, so Crescent's at the merge.
Yeah.
I'll text it to you, Tony.
Yeah.
I'll text it to you.
Okay.
And I'll email it to anybody who contacts me.
Part of our letters to the county ought to be to make these things a lot more easy to find. Like if there's a nuisance order up, it should be on the homepage, not buried very, on the cyber. Thank you.
Do you want Lisa to say something?
Lisa, you have anything left for closing comments? Just unmute yourself.
Let Jay keep going.
Cool. Back to you, Jay.
And then, yeah, I got a couple of things though.
Oh, sorry.
Comments, when a lot of us are working during this time of week, like during work time, is that we can't hear our county commissioners or even Crestone Town Hall, which is London, but when they're speaking, we need to request more and more that they are more able to be audible and speaking to the mic more.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
All right, well, thank you guys all for coming and participating and helping us out, helping the county out. If you guys want to stay afterwards and chat, feel free.
Just have to empty out my stuff.
Take your mind off this. April 1st and 2nd, seed exchange.
Hey.
Easter, 1 p.m.